Welcome to the session. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to try and do these monthly. If you were, some of you I can see were here last month. I did a session about goal setting. If you didn't get to go to that, I have got that available to watch back. Just give me a shout if you need access to that. And I'm going to do these kind of on a rolling basis, based on things, often mostly things that are coming up from my clients that I'm working with. But if there's anything specific, I think last time someone particularly asked for this topic, so I'm always happy to take suggestions for things to come up. Um, for those of you that have just come into the room, please note this is being recorded. It is, I'm just double checking. Yes, it is being recorded. So if you want to turn off your cameras or anything, I think it's only should be me that's, the person who's talking that is seen. But if there's anything, you want to stay anonymous, let me know. If you wouldn't mind just popping yourself on mute, if you've just come in, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and there'll be time for Q&A at the end, and I won't record that, so you can be a bit more kind of free and breezy and be honest if if you want to do that without that being recorded. I completely understand. You might not want to do that while it's being recorded. Just to say, so what we're going to be talking about is obviously imposter syndrome today, but we're not going to be fixing it. We're not going to kind of get rid of your imposter syndrome altogether. That's a bit of a tall order for 45 minutes, but it's also, longer term work. It's much more than that. In fact, I think what's more important, rather than try to eradicate it or ignore it or hide it or push it away or anything like that, is to acknowledge it's there. Have a little bit of an understanding about why it happens. So I think that logic for me personally can help. But then looking about relating to it differently. All right. So it's just a bit about actually identity, which is most things within ADHD coaching. When I do this, it's not always about hacks. I don't really like the hacks. Sometimes it's helpful to have some tips and tricks, and there will be some ideas at the end of things to, tools to use. But actually, ultimately, it's all about understanding and accepting and kind of figuring out how it works for you. Right. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all of this. If you're watching it back on replay and you want to pause it, you can have a look a bit about me. That's boring. Most of you know me anyway. But just the biggest thing I think that's important to know is that I was diagnosed 3 years ago and a bit with ADHD. So a lot of what I talk about is not only from my experience and my qualifications and everything else, but it's also from my lived experience. So, as I said, today isn't about fixing your imposter syndrome or fixing you. It's just about understanding kind of a pattern. So we're going to do 30 minutes of me trying to just get through the slides. Do stop me if you've got any questions. If anything doesn't make sense, you want me to repeat anything, please feel free. I will ask you if you want to kind of join in. I'd love you to kind of like put some things in the chat. So it's not just me talking the whole way through, but this is a bit of a sort of educational piece. And then at the end, 15 minutes Q&A. And as I said, we won't have that recorded. That's just for you guys to talk about it. I can stay on until 3. So if you do, if we go over, that's fine. But also if you need to leave earlier, feel free. Don't feel bad about that. No pressure to share. If you don't want to, if you just want to sit and listen, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay. So let's have a look. Let's have a little think. This is what I think imposter syndrome feels like. And I'd love to know if any of this seems familiar to you. Can you put it in the chat? Just sort of say yes. Or if there's anything else you'd like to add. So this is what it feels like for me, and this is what some of my clients have talked about. Feeling like you've tricked people. Like they think I'm good at this, but I'm not really. Attributing your success to luck. So you've only just got there by like pure luck. And this fear of being found out all the time. Overworking to stay ahead, so that overcompensating all the time to like feel like you're doing enough. Praise being uncomfortable. I know this happens a lot in I really work on this in my sessions with my clients about talking about your wins and talking about what you've done well, to practice doing that. And I know a lot of them feel like that, oh, that cringe of saying I did really well at this. And if someone else tells them and I try and say, well, that's brilliant, like that's really great, they're like, okay, makes them feel really uncomfortable. Those good days when you have had a good day and you can acknowledge that actually, God, today has been really good. I've done really well. It's, well, that's just a one-off. That's just a fluke. And those bad days are the proof. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat to see what people are saying. Yeah, 100%. So true. Sometimes makes me feel like I manipulate people. Someone said, oh, that's really interesting. There's a deep emotion there, isn't there, with manipulating? I wonder what that's about. Something to think about. Needing to prove myself. Yeah, absolutely. Fake it till you make it. Yeah, 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 definitely. I've kind of always been a bit of an advocate of that. I think in some ways, fake it till you make it. What is it like, dress for the job that you wish you had kind of thing. But yeah, definitely but that's till you make it. When do you make it? When do you believe you've actually made it? Yeah, you're just always faking it the whole time. Yeah, praise. Yeah, that's really true. Praise was uncomfortable. I love to praise others. I agree with that 100%. I don't like taking compliments myself or praise, but I love telling other people. I think that's, really important. Feeling like I haven't done enough, I've worked hard, and fear of being exposed. That's a big one, isn't it? That fear of being exposed. I think that fear is a horrible one, isn't it? Where you just think, yeah, like someone's going to find out. Okay, thank you so much for sharing those. If you're watching on replay, you might have some ideas of your own as well to kind of have a think about what does it feel like for you. This is one definition of imposter syndrome. You'll probably have your own ideas on it, but I sort of like looked up, tried to think what does it come, and this resonates most with me. So it's this persistent feeling that your success isn't legitimate even when there's evidence there is. So it's not that you're, actually really rubbish at what you're doing. When you look at it, you are successful, but it's just that feeling that for some reason it's, I can't take credit for it. Now, a lot of my clients start off on it's actually the idea of this came from a call that I had with a client at the beginning of this year, and she came to me saying, what I'd like to work on today is my confidence. And as we talked through, we realized actually it wasn't what she was experiencing wasn't about confidence. It was about imposter syndrome. And there's a difference between the two. So confidence and self-trust are kind of two different things, I think. Confidence is one of those things that kind of fluctuates, that some days you feel really confident, some days you're like, yeah, I've got this, I'm on top of this. And other days there's just no way, you can't do it. Whereas self-trust is kind of a more inbuilt thing that is on a level that, and it's this idea that even if you mess up, so even if I completely lose track of what I'm saying on this call and I don't know, and I say something completely wrong, knowing that it doesn't really matter. Okay, that doesn't define my worth. I might have made a mistake, but I know I'll get through it. I'll start again. People won't mind. It's that sort of self-trust that actually I'll be okay and I'll do it again. Perhaps I'll have to redo it and it'll be fine. So that doesn't fluctuate so much, and that's just something that is really hard to build, but is absolutely possible to do. And you don't need to have confidence to have self-trust. You can kind of have a bit of a low confidence day, but overall think, you know what, I do believe in myself. And it's about this trust that you can handle those variable days, right? You all know, assuming all of you on this call have got ADHD, our days are so different, aren't they, from one day to the next in terms of what we're, able to manage or complete. Um, and adapting when things feel harder and still being able to move forward imperfectly. So if you can trust that you can do that, that's when the imposter syndrome starts to, rear its head a bit less. So as you probably are aware, ADHD brains aren't consistent in the traditional sense. Yeah, so our energy, our focus, executive functioning, all of that naturally fluctuates. The goal here, what we're trying to do, is not to push ourselves to perform at exactly the same level every day. What we need to do is trust that we can handle those fluctuations. All right. So there's this acceptance. This is what I really want to kind of get across is it's not about changing your behavior and doing things differently and better. It's about, okay, some days that's going to fluctuate, but I can trust that I can do that without shaming myself, without blaming myself, all of that kind of negative emotion, without panicking, all of that, general self-flagellation stuff. So I can trust that I can handle those variable days. And I can trust that when I'm having a harder day, I'm not going to immediately come to the conclusion that something's wrong with me. All right. It's just, this is the way things are for me. And I need to honor my needs and adapt where necessary. Okay. Maybe today I just need to go and have a nap. All right. And sometimes that's what's needed and honoring that. And then this last bit about moving forward, even if it's not as fast or in the way that you'd planned. Yeah. Sometimes things don't happen as quickly as we'd hoped or in the way that we'd sort of expected it to, but we can still move forward in an imperfect way. Just had a comment here. I heard a great definition that confidence is willingness to try. So it's self-trust too, to try. Yeah. Yeah. Willingness to try. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Okay. So why this makes ADHD more likely. I'm going to run through some of these things quite quickly with you. I just want to check. Yes, I have got them all there. So I think I've taken one of these out because I realized it was going to be really long. So I've just realized I've already made a mistake. It doesn't matter though. We can come back to them. So ADHD, with ADHD, our brains work differently, right? We have different levels of dopamine activity. Executive function happens differently. We also have not only what's going on in the moment in the chemistry of our brain, we've got all the years previously of what things have been said to us when we didn't understand ourselves, especially for those of us that are late diagnosed. I think there's a really different experience there of not knowing why all of these things have happened. So I'm going to run through some of these quickly. ADHD brains are variable, as I keep saying. Yeah, some days you're going to be brilliant. Yeah, focused, clear, productive. You can just do it. And other days, your brain's just not going to cooperate. Everything feels harder. But what happens with most of us, and I don't know if you agree with this, is when you've seen your best self, that becomes the standard. You kind of believe that that's how I should be operating. That's what's normal. So if you have an average day, you assume that something's wrong. And I see this time and time again with not just my clients, but my, friends that have got ADHD and with myself, is you base yourself, you compare yourself to this peak. Most people don't do that. Like most neurotypical people know that, oh, I might have a really, really good day and that was good. But we kind of go, well, if I can reach that, if I can do that, then everything else is not good enough. So just remember this inconsistency is part of your brain, and just remember that we don't need to compare ourselves to our best day. I'm just looking at the chat to see if it's on there. I'll just have there. The second one is about masking. And again, I think this is really, really prevalent in late diagnosed adults and women particularly as well. We hide how hard things really are. Yeah, so that public persona, what people see is that we are capable, we know what we're doing, we're smashing it. I hear sometimes people talk about me, and my clients have had the same. Everyone thinks that I'm doing really, really well, but inside I'm just totally overwhelmed. And then that adds this other layer because you think no one is seeing how hard I'm working on this. Everyone thinks this is easy for me. So that success feels fraudulent. Yeah, feels like it's not really, you don't really deserve it because you've worked so hard and everybody else kind of assumed that you're just naturally good at it. So you have this underlying feeling of if only they knew how hard this was. The fact that we do have to work harder in general is another aspect here. Yeah, so we can achieve the same outcome, but what we need to get us through it is panic, pulling all-nighters, super intensity and hyper focus. So it doesn't feel earned. It just doesn't feel like we deserve it. And all that effort, instead of what we should see it as resilience, despite the struggles that we might face, it becomes in our brains some evidence that we're not good enough, the inadequacy. As I mentioned, especially with late diagnosis and not understanding, or even when even for people that have known they've had ADHD their whole life, they're going to have got messages. There's a lot of negative messages, but also mixed messages. So that kind of you've got so much potential is like it's kind of a compliment, isn't it? It's like because they know that you could do it, but it's also but you're not meeting it, the try harder, you could do better. It's all that like I see such potential in you. If only you tried a bit harder, you could. And that whole this is something I don't know if the word inconsistent was there on there, but like on my school reports, really bright but not achieving her potential. So you get this message that you are really capable, but you're not doing well enough. And those messages stay with us. Okay. Even if those messages go away, they get built up inside of us. So you might be praised one day, criticized the next, creates all sorts of confusion. And instead of developing that stable self-trust, what you develop is something called like conditional self-worth. So we learn that our value depends on our performance. So we're only worthy if we manage to reach that potential, if we manage to reach that output, whatever it is. So that conditional self-worth, I think, is something that's really worth remembering and trying to work on. And so, yeah, it becomes internalized. So even if the external voice, even if you're kind of, maybe it happened in childhood, might be happening if you started a new job, but even if that's not there anymore, it becomes an internal voice. And so you tell yourself the same thing even when that's not there. And that becomes the foundation of imposter syndrome. So keep up with the chat. Yes, every school report has the potential to. I'm just reading the chat. Yes. I had this stats down somewhere and I couldn't remember it. So thank you for putting this up there. By the time a child with ADHD reaches their 12th birthday, they're estimated to have received around 20,000 more negative or corrective messages than their neurotypical peers. Thank you so much for that. That's Dodson. I had that in my head and I couldn't remember the exact number, so I didn't want to say it. So thank you for that. Isn't that amazing? I think that's, it's heartbreaking. And I'm really careful with that with my children. But yeah, it does. It gets stuck there. Other parts of ADHD that make this more difficult is our emotional sensitivity. Right, that's something I've always been called very sensitive, oversensitive. I don't think I'm oversensitive. But our nervous systems are more sensitive, and not just, in that negative way, but we feel things much more. Those mistakes feel way bigger. Any criticism, even if it's not criticism, even if it's just like a neutral comment, it feels heavy. And any one mistake that you make can outweigh 10 successes. Our nervous system, and this is not just for people with ADHD, this is everyone, but it is particularly, I think, amplified with ADHDers, are going to remember our failures more loudly than our achievements. And that's a kind of, if you've ever learned anything about neuroscience, that's a real thing that comes from, mammalian, olden days, where our brain is trying to keep us safe. Okay, we have this negativity bias. So we try and, there's a threat. So we hold on to those threats because we don't want that bad thing to happen again. But any compliments or good stuff gets moved away because that's not something we need to worry about. So that nervous system doesn't distinguish between those kind of past being chased by a lion, not a lion, probably, I don't know, whatever, being chased by whatever, versus someone telling you didn't do a very good job in the present. So our nervous system becomes primed to anticipate that feeling again. Right. So it's a lot, we can look at imposter syndrome from the point of view of logic. Well, actually, we can argue against it, but it's innate, it's deep in our nervous system, and it's trying to protect us. All right. So we're trying to prevent that future emotional pain by staying hyper vigilant. And then success discounting. So this is where we don't hold on to our wins. I see this all the time again with my clients. Something goes well, instead of just allowing it to remind you that how good you actually are at that, you actually just explain it away somehow. Use something like, oh, it was just luck, or anyone could have done that. I only managed because I panicked, or I did it last minute. It's a bit like that whole, oh, I like your dress. Oh, it's just from Primark. I got it in the sale. You kind of push it away, don't you? But that happens so much with ADHD brains. So it doesn't log it as evidence of capability. But if something does go wrong, the opposite of that, then it gets stored very, very clearly and strongly in the brain. So that creates this imbalance. The failures feel meaningful and success feels accidental. So that evidence, because we're not allowing it to be emotionally absorbed, that confidence, that self-trust doesn't really, compound. Yeah, too sensitive, absolutely. So I'm going to keep track of other things. Right, I've been talking for a long time. Has anyone got any questions before we move on to how to kind of manage it? I just thought it might be helpful to have a little think about where it's all coming from and what's going on for us. Anyone got any questions or comments they'd like to make? So there'll be time at the end. So if not now, then that's fine. I just wanted to give you a chance. Okay, let's keep going. How are we doing for time? All right, teeny bit behind, but we'll be okay. So, as I said, we're not trying to eliminate imposter syndrome thoughts. You're just trying to change your relationship to them. So keep that in mind. It's not about getting rid of it. That self-doubt might still show up. It doesn't have to decide what you do next. Yeah, those thoughts are there. It doesn't have to actually determine what you do about it. So especially if you know, that self-doubt is going to come up, especially if you're doing something new or if you're stretching yourself, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone or you're under some kind of pressure, that is still going to come. So we need to think about, how do we manage it when it does arrive? How do we relate to those thoughts? Okay. So looking at those thoughts differently to how we maybe are currently. So instead of treating them as facts, you start recognizing them as mental events. Someone explained this to me once when I think it was someone doing NLP. But a thought is just a mental event. It's something that's happening in your brain, in your mind. Right? It's not a fact necessarily. So you might notice that thought that says, I don't belong here, or I'm not good enough, or what they're all going to think this of me. But instead of assuming it's true, just recognize it as your nervous system reacting to something. All right. And just that naming it, I think just that kind of seeing what's happening, saying out loud or in your head, maybe if there's people around, but this is not a fact. This is just a thought. Thought is there. I don't have to do anything with it. Yeah. And that thought, whatever it is that's come up, I don't belong here, it might be actually be a good thing while you're listening. What is that thought? You probably have lots of different ones, but is there a main one? You don't have to share it with me, feel free to, but what comes up in your head when imposter syndrome happens? So I think that's really good to kind of be aware for when that thought comes, that particular thought. I don't belong here, I'm not good enough. My one is always, who do you think you are? Yeah, it's just a thought. It's not an objective assessment of your competence. All right. It's a lot of longer words than I usually use, but I like it. So it's not actually really able to decide if you're good enough at it or not. It's just a thought. So as I said, labeling it, I think labeling it is so powerful. Right, noticing it, what's happening. That's my imposter voice. Some people give it a name. They call it Immy the imposter or something like that. It's not something that you need to fight and it's not something that you need to fix. And it's not something that you need to obey. Yeah, it's just something that's happening. Just have a quick look at the chat. Oh, interesting. I'm not going to read these out because I think they're your internal thoughts. But yeah. And that's a good point. Someone said, I think sometimes the thought is so quiet that I barely hear it. It became so automatic. Now thank you for sharing that because that's really important. I'm sort of assuming that that thought is loud and it's not always loud. It's a really good point to bring up. And it's something that you almost don't want to listen out for because you know it's not good for you. But if you do want to relate to it differently, you do need to kind of almost like call it in, like, come on then, what is it? What is it you're trying to say to me? Let's have it then. Let's go with it. So thank you for sharing that because I think, yeah, it's not always so obvious. But once you kind of see what's being said, label it, tell yourself that it's not something you need to do anything about. You don't need that confidence to take action. You do need to stop waiting for that self-doubt to disappear though, right? Because it won't just disappear. It's a little bit kind of just feel the fear and do it anyway. The goal isn't to silence the voice, it's to stop letting it run the show. All right. And I think as ADHDers, often we have this all or nothing thinking and we're like, right, I don't want to have imposter syndrome anymore. I'm just going to get rid of it. But let's look at the first step. It's like, it's there. Hi, thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Not really nice. But you're not in charge, right? I'm in charge. Okay, so just for the last couple of minutes, then some practical tools to think about. I hope that's, I know I feel like I'm laboring a point here a little bit about that, it not being a real, it's not that it's not a real thing, but it's not something you have to do anything about. It's just there. So, no. So a couple of things, and I'm just going to run through them really, really quickly. So if either when the imposter syndrome is showing up in the moment or just as a general kind of habit to do to try and build up your resilience to it, here are a couple of things that you can try. So capturing your wins. And again, say I always do this, try and do this on my coaching calls. If you don't have a coach, or even if you have someone to talk to, whether it's a partner or parents or kids or whatever, just with yourself, write it down somewhere. Keep this running list of what you've done, any praise that you've got, any kind of compliments you've got from your clients or your boss or whatever, any progress that you've made, because we ignore those things. One of my clients, and I tell everyone about this, created something called an evidence box, and it's literally, she has this physical box where she writes things and she puts it in there, the evidence that actually she's doing well. And I love that. If that, be creative with that. Instead of a to-do list, have a to-da list. Someone has told me about that, and I like that as well. Externalize that evidence, right? Externalize it, because our working memories are not always good enough to recall them when we want to. Go and find that piece of paper, that notebook perhaps, or one of your notebooks that you're using. Letting praise land. Okay, so we've talked about this. This is a practice, but just say thank you. Someone says something nice, just say thank you. Just try that one. Yeah, easier said than done, I know, but it literally is just practice. Don't deflect it. Don't kind of bat it away. I started doing this myself a couple of years ago, and I'm getting, it's still work in progress, but it feels really nice, not only for me, for the person who's being praised, but also for the person that gives the praise, because I think it's a bit, I try to look at it as it's a bit rude to say, oh, no, 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 no. Like, actually, someone's praised you, someone's complimented you, thank them, and then everyone feels good. So even if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for them if you're practicing. So checking the evidence, like literally, there's different things that you can do in CBT. There are different things like take the thought to court. So what's happening? Like, let's have a look, the pros and cons, the for and against. If you were a lawyer, if this was your friend coming to you saying this, what would you tell them? And not just about being nice, but also like, actually, well, hang on, let's look at this and this and this. There's no way that you're incapable idiot. Like, this is actually, all these things have happened. So try and do that for yourself as well. Self-compassion. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that I need to say about that. This is hard, but it's also something you need to practice, something you just need to do, and do it in small steps. Yeah, just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. Some tasks genuinely require more effort with ADHD, and that's just the way it is. All right, be kind to yourself about that. You're still doing a bloody good job. Yeah, despite everything else, and not only ADHD, but all of the rest of life that is going on around you. Reframing mistakes. So this is something that I'd written down from that someone said to me once. Mistakes are data, or data if you're American, I think. It's just information, right? Mistakes are just information that you can learn from, and they're not identity. Your mistakes don't define you. They're just something that you did maybe that you would do differently, and you can learn from. Remembering that average days are normal, yeah, that's okay. And that's what we need to aim. We need to aim for average days, right? We don't need to kind of constantly be striving for top days all the time. It's just not sustainable. And then just in terms of like somatics, sometimes you just need a body reset, nervous system reset. Yeah. Breathing exercises. Just sometimes it's just a big long sigh. Dropping your shoulders, thinking about where you're sitting, put your feet on the ground, maybe go out for a walk, touch some grass, hug a tree, I don't know, whatever works, but something that just kind of grounds you a bit more so that you can move on and then you can act. I'm not saying your names just so that keep your anonymity. I collect wins, but they don't help very much in a down moment. They do help. They do help build up confidence and self-trust after. Yeah, this is it. In that moment when you're feeling really down, it's not necessarily going to pull you out of that hole. But I think what you're saying there is, it is like building blocks that for future, it's building your like future resilience by increasing your own sort of self-trust as time goes along. So those downs don't happen quite so often or quite so deeply. So yeah, so it's maybe not a great tool for some people in the very moment, but still worth doing for longer term. Okay. I did want to keep this really short because I know we're all very busy and attention spans perhaps. But just to kind of finish off by saying you're not a fraud. You are a capable person. Maybe you have a variable brain. And self-trust can be rebuilt. If you know your self-trust is very low, it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. You can rebuild it. I'm going to go to questions in a second. I just want to quickly show you and some takeaways and feedback. I've done this in the wrong order. I just want to quickly show you this. I'm not going to go on about this, but if anyone would like to spend a bit more time talking about this with me, I do have a 90-minute focus session, and this for people that are attending these talks, I've got £100 off. It's a QR code there. I will send you all an email after this with the links as well. So if you miss this, then that's fine. If you just want to talk to me about whether you want to actually do some longer term coaching, there's a QR code for that too. And then my coaching brochure to find out more. So I'm going to leave those up. I'm going to ask if there's any questions that anyone is happy to ask while the recording's happening. If I don't hear anything or once people go quiet, I'll then stop the recording and we'll do that individually.